Okay. So the definition of the square root of negative 1 is I. So if I have the square root of negative 81, I get the square root of 81 times the square root of negative 1. And the square root of 81 is 9. And the square root of negative 1 is I. So this would be the square root of 4 times the square root of negative 1, which gives me 2I. And so the square root of negative 49 would be very good. So when we talk about this, we're talking about a complex number. And a complex number means there's a real part and an imaginary part. So the real part here is 7, and the imaginary part is 6I. And the real part is 3, and the imaginary part is 5I. The real part is 2, and the imaginary part is I. Stop yawning. You are having fun. I know. I don't know why you're yawning. No, you're not. You're having fun. I know. I know. It's okay. So, the first thing, what am I doing here? I'm going to add, right? So this is like distributing a positive 1, correct? So I get 5 minus 7I plus 2 plus 4I. And what can I combine? The 5 plus 2 gives me 7, and negative 7I plus 4I gives me minus 3I. So on B, it's the same thing. Negative 4, I have minus 8, and minus 7I. So I'm going to combine the negative 4 minus 8, gives me negative 12, minus 7I. Can I combine the negative 12 and the negative 7? Why? It's imaginary, and this is real, and we're not putting the two together, all right? Can't do that. So how about the next one? So what's in front of the parentheses this time? It's negative 1, right? So I get negative 4 minus 6 plus 10I. So negative 4 minus 6 gives me negative 10 plus 10I. So now I'm back to addition. So none of the signs change. So I have minus 8I, minus 1, minus 4I. I'm going to combine like terms. Negative 12I minus 1. E. So this time I have a negative 1. So I'm going to get minus 6 minus I. And then I'm going to combine like terms. 7 minus 6 gives me 1. And 3I minus I gives me negative 4I. Everybody try the next one. You can do this. I know you can. So you have minus 3 plus 6. Wait. Oh, this is 3. Sorry. And those cancel out. And then I have 4I plus 3I is 7I plus 6I gives you 13I. All right? Okay, so here comes the really fun part. So let's see. On the front, at the bottom down here, Michael, so watch. If you have I, we said that I was the square root of negative 1, right? So if I take I squared, that means I'm taking I times I. Is that correct? And we said I was the square root of negative 1. So if I put the square root of negative 1 in here for both of my i's, I get negative 1. And here's why. It's confusing because it's negative, right? But what's the square root of 2 times the square root of 2? 2. The square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. So the square root of negative 1 times the square root of negative 1 is negative 1. So if I take I to the third power, how many i's do I have? I have 3 i's. Is that correct? And what did we just say 2 i's was equal to? Negative 1. So this is negative I. And I to the fourth is how many i's? 4. But that's 2 sets of 2. And that's negative 1 times negative 1. Is that correct? So that equals 1. So in the little chart at the top of the page that we're getting ready to start, it gives you the pattern. So I to the first is I. I to the second is negative 1. And this is the one you need to remember because we're going to use it all the time. So now, am I adding or subtracting here? Now I'm multiplying. They're side by side with no addition and no subtraction. So I'm going to distribute 7. And when I do that, I get negative 35 plus 21i. So when I go to B, what's 6 times 6? I times I? I squared. And what do we say I squared was? Negative 1. So this is 36 times negative 1, which is negative 36. Mrs. Archer. What's up? Hang on one second. So if I take 4 times 4, I get 16. I times I gives me I squared. So this gives me negative 16. On D, am I adding, subtracting, or multiplying? Multiplying. So I get negative 7i. And then what's a negative 7 times a negative 1? Positive 7i squared, right? Because I times I gives me I squared, and 7 times a negative 1 gives me positive 7. But what do we know about the I squared? It's a negative 1, so I get negative 7i minus 7. Let's do the one right underneath of it. So, again, I'm multiplying because there's no add or subtract between it. So negative 3 times 4 times 2, negative 24. And then I times I is I to the third. And so I to the third, if you look up in the chart, what is I to the third? So I get negative 24 times negative I. What's a negative times a negative? 24i. So on h, I'm multiplying this also. So I'm going to take negative 7 times negative 7 gives me positive 49. Negative 7 times 3i gives me minus 21i. 3i times negative 7 gives me minus 21i. And 3 times 3 would give me 9i squared. But 9i squared, the I squared is negative 1, so this is negative 9. And then I have minus 21 minus 21, and that gives me negative 42i. And 49 minus 9 gives me 40 minus 42i. So again, can I combine the 40 and the 42? No, because this has an I, and you can't put together the real and the imaginary. So when I multiply on number 9, 2 times 2 gives me 4. 2 times a minus 5i gives me negative 10i. 5i times 2 gives me 10i. And so I get 5i times a negative 5i, which gives me minus 25i squared. And we said the I squared was negative 1, so this is plus 25, and this is 4. And what happens to my minus 10i, positive 10i? They cancel, so I get 4 plus 25, which is 29.